During the next half hour, we'll talk to Archbishop Blase Cupich about his recent trip to Ukraine and to Rome. We'll take you to St. Hyacinth Basilica, where a ministry called Rest in His Arms helps provide a proper funeral service for an abandoned baby. And we'll explain how a wager over the Stanley Cup has everyone coming out a winner. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Hello, I'm Todd Williamson, Director of the Office for Divine Worship for the Archdiocese of Chicago. And here in the studio with me, as always, is Archbishop Blase Cupich. Archbishop, welcome home.
Good to be back.
As of this taping, you've just returned, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There's the last couple of weeks have been very busy for you. You've been to a number of places. You've met a number of people. You've done a number of things. Tell us about the Rome trip and your meeting with Pope Francis.
Well, I was contacted after arriving in Rome to set up a time with the Holy Father. He asked me to have a private meeting with him. It was on the 26th. A few days before the Mass for the Pallium, and it was at the residence where the Holy Father lives. He could not have been more welcoming, warm, and confirming in my appointment as the Archbishop.
Nice. How exciting. I can't imagine being in the same room with him. I understand he's just very gracious. And
he really was, and we had a good long conversation about a number of things. He was an individual who put me at ease right away. I did, of course, have to dig deep because the conversation was all in Italian. And I don't use Italian every day. I know it well enough to be able to carry on a conversation. So I had to tell him that I knew I would be making some mistakes, and he was very indulgent about that.
Did he have a message for the people of Chicago?
He did. Asked me, in fact, 3 different times at that first meeting that I had on the 26th, but at 2 other moments in which I had a conversation with him on the 29th, and it was a consistent one. Please tell everyone to pray for me. The role that he plays in the life of the Church is not easy. And so he does need everyone's prayers, and I see that in his visit to the South American countries, he asked for that again, and especially to pray for the Synod. He said, we're going to need a miracle at the Synod as we take up some very challenging issues for the life of people in the practice of their faith today.
Sure. You mentioned June 29th, of course. Big
Yes.
part of your trip to Rome was for the Solemnity of Peter and Paul, June 29th. You concelebrated the Mass of the Solemnity with the Pope and other newly appointed archbishops. That was the Mass where the Pallium was blessed, was it not?
It was. In fact, there were 46 of us from around the world. I knew a couple of them, a couple of the bishops. The new Bishop of Kaunas in Lithuania I knew, and the Archbishop also of Malta, Archbishop Shiklunen, of course, Archbishop Wester of Santa Fe. So it was an opportunity for me to get to know them, but also to meet some of the other archbishops from around the world. And we all were presented then to the Holy Father before the Mass and then after.
Tell us a little bit about the Pallium. What is it, just for our viewers who might not know? What is it? What does it symbolize?
It's a woolen scarf that goes around the head of a bishop, rests on his shoulders. The Holy Father, as you will see in the Mass, is wearing one as well. It's white in color because of the wool, but also there are black ends to it, which symbolize the feet or the hooves of the sheep.
I love that.
So that you really are carrying, as the Good Shepherd shows, the sheep on your shoulders. And it is a way in which the Church wants to give prominence to a metropolitan archbishop who has responsibility for not only his archdiocese, but to promote unity and solidarity among the other bishops within his province. Here we have in the province of Chicago, the other dioceses here in the state of Illinois. So the Holy Father really emphasized our role in which he talked about the importance of our life together as a communion with him, to promote unity in the church.
Mm-hmm. I understand that you actually didn't receive the pallium itself. You received it in a box, a sealed box,
Well,
is it?
it was in a sealed box that also had a letter on top of it addressed to the Papal Nuncio, Archbishop Vigano, who will be here on August the 23rd to actually put it on me. And since the letter was addressed to him, I didn't feel that I should open other people's mail. I think it's a federal offense.
On the 23rd. Wonderful Mass for the Archdiocese of Chicago, but also for the province, the whole province of Chicago, of Illinois. The other bishops of those dioceses will be here, I understand?
Yes, and there was some real planning ahead of time to make sure that everybody could make it. And the 23rd was exactly a date that worked simply because the bishops of the province are coming here anyway for our retreat, which begins that evening. And so the Papal Nuncio was free, and we were able to coordinate it very quickly. I was very pleased.
Nice. The rite itself is rather simple, isn't it, in terms of the receiving the pallium? It happens at the very beginning.
Right.
He places it on your shoulders.
Right. It's a very simple ritual in which we begin Mass with this, and then Mass continues as usual. But it is a moment, I think, of high significance because it'll be the first time in which I'll be wearing it.
Yeah, yeah. And the first time that an archbishop will have received his pallium in his own cathedral for 30-something years, right?
That's right. And it is it's a way in which the local church here in Chicago, but also in union with the other churches within the state, can come together and really celebrate their unity among each other.
Right. Prior to this, it was St. John Paul II who actually pulled the investiture of the pallium out of the rite of installation. Otherwise, you would have received it back in November when you were installed.
That's right.
And he called the archbishops to Rome so that he himself could place it on him.
That's right.
And then, as you mentioned, Pope Francis in January, I believe, wasn't it, announced that the archbishops would now, from that point, be receiving it in their cathedral church.
Well, in fact, there's some speculation that maybe there won't be the gathering on the 29th anymore in Rome for even the blessing, that, or if it is, that the archbishops will not receive it at that time, but they will go back to the earlier situation of when they're installed to have it imposed on them. I don't think it's clear yet, but there was some discussion. Of course, Rome is always filled with rumors.
We're very excited. I'm looking forward to that day. It'll be a great day here.
Good.
Great day. Another part of your trip that you're just getting back from was a visit to Ukraine.
Right.
You were part of a delegation from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. There's been an awful lot of upheaval that has displaced thousands of people there. Tell us about this delegation and your visit.
Well, Archbishop Kurtz, the president of our conference, who's the Archbishop of Louisville, asked me to accompany him. He was invited. I am the chair for the Committee for Eastern and Central Europe. And so we arrived there with other staff members. We wanted to make sure it was a pastoral visit of support and solidarity. So we went to not only Kiev and Lviv, but also Kharkiv. Kharkiv is in the eastern part, not too far from Donetsk now, which has been separated from the rest of Ukraine by separatists, and also there are with the involvement of Russia. And so that whole war situation has developed into about 1 million refugees. We visited a refugee camp where there were people with children, families, many women. Their husbands were not with them. Either they had abandoned them or were off in the war. And so there's a great difficulty. And then we also visited a military hospital. And in that military hospital, we came across a young man who lost his arm. And we heard that he was trying to come to the United States to have a prosthetic placed on his arm, but could not get a visa. So Archbishop Kurtz and I, in discussing with the American ambassador, were able to secure that visa. And he'll be coming to Chicago this month to receive a prosthetic. And it'll be a way in which this young man's life can have some healing, but also it'll send a signal to all of those who are involved in this conflict, that the people, especially the Church in the United States, stands by them in this moment of suffering.
Is that what your message was to the people that you visited in those camps and at the hospitals?
Very much so. We wanted to let them know that they were not alone, that we understood, and also they had fought for many years for freedom. And we wanted to make sure that the democratic principles of freedom and equality were something that they knew were worth fighting and that they had the support of others.
Oh, a powerful trip,
Yes, very much so.
A few weeks ago, you had a press conference here in Chicago. You delayed your trip to the Ukraine for this on the day that Pope Francis issued his encyclical, Laudato Si, on the care for our common home. It was well attended by the media, even though it was on the same day as the Blackhawks' victory. And we actually have a few seconds, a few cuts from that news conference. So let's take a look.
Oh, great.
Pope Francis speaks of a moral imperative because it is an unmistakable fact that our environment is in peril. Laudato Si is nothing less than a call to preserve full human dignity. Our faith dictates that we have to care about and for humankind, and we can't do that without caring for the earth, our common home. In short, we see the assault on the environment as a fundamental matter of right and wrong. Why is the Pope choosing this moment to be clear about the Church's views? What does the Pope add to the discussion? First, the Pope makes clear he is addressing not just church members or any particular country, but he is inviting each person on this planet to become informed, to begin a discussion, and to take action to protect and repair our common home. Second, the Pope clearly identifies the ecological crisis as essentially a spiritual problem. The rupture of the relationship between humanity and the planet is an ecological sin that requires repentance and a firm purpose of amendment. The cause is the same as all sin: selfishness.
Archbishop, that clip highlighted 2 points that you made, but you made 2 other points in regard to the encyclical and what it addresses: the poor and business practice. Talk a little bit more about those.
Well, as the Holy Father mentions in the encyclical, those who are going to suffer the most from the ravages of the environment and the degradation of the environment will be the poor, because they will have fewer resources to defend themselves, either with climate change or the rising of the sea levels. They're the ones who are going to pay the price. And so it is, in many ways, a part of the Holy Father's message that nobody be left behind, that everybody have a place at the table of life. And if we endanger the environment that people depend on for their livelihood, for crops, for abundant rains, then they're the ones who are going to suffer the most. And with regard to businesses, the Pope is not against people making a profit or businesses being successful. In fact, he does rely on that. But what he is saying is that those business practices should be done in a way that doesn't damage the environment, but also takes in consideration that it is our common home. And as such, when people do benefit from a clean environment, a good environment, they have to make sure that they invest in its future as well, and not just take from it. So the Holy Father is very, I think, in tune with what a lot of businesses today are doing in their practices with regard to deferred maintenance of their buildings. They're making sure that they budget for various future liabilities that are out there, to make sure that their profit margin is really accurate reading of the situation. What are the real costs of doing business? Not just for the buildings that they use, but also for the environment in which we live.
You made that point in that news clip we just saw, that this is not a political statement. It's not addressed to any particular nation, but that it's addressed to every person, every Catholic, and indeed every person.
Right, and it's not also anything that is addressed to any one income group either. We're all in this together. It is our common home, as the Holy Father has said.
It won't surprise you, one of my favorite parts of the encyclical is where he talks about the environment and the cosmic liturgy.
Right, exactly.
How all of creation praises God just by its existence. And that's a responsibility then that we have to be part of that liturgy as well.
And how in keeping that is with his name of Francis, because St. Francis had that sense in which all of creation is giving glory to God, which was the inspiration for the title itself of the encyclical.
Taken from the Canticle of the Sun.
Exactly.
A wonderful piece of music and poetry and part of our tradition that the Pope picks up on. Wonderful, wonderful. A couple of weeks ago, you were a main celebrant at Holy Name Cathedral for a very special event, for the sealing of the Holy Door there at Holy Name. For our viewers, could you talk about the significance of this Holy Door and what its purpose is and its significance to the Jubilee of Mercy?
Well, the Jubilee of Mercy will officially begin on December the 8th, which is the time in which the Holy Father will open the Holy Door at St. Peter's. We wanted to be in sync with that, in union with that, to have our own Holy Door experience, because it is in the passing through the Holy Door, over the threshold of that space into the space where God changes our lives, that we begin to have transformation take place in our lives. And so we will open that door that has been shut and closed. It is the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, and for our country, it's our patronal feast as a nation. And what the Holy Father really wanted to express in that gesture of closing and then reopening a door is that the Lord is opening a new door of mercy, giving us a new opportunity. We talk about that all the time, that a new door opens in our lives, just like a new chapter. And so he's using that very important metaphor to begin the Holy Year.
And during that Holy Year, the door will remain open, unlocked, and an opportunity for any person to enter through it, recommit themselves to mercy, to being vehicles of mercy, right, as the Pope has called for.
And also receiving mercy. There are a lot of people in my pastoral experience that I've come across who really feel as though their life is unforgivable. Their life has had so many twists and turns in it that God really can't reach out to them. Our hope would be that we all can experience the mercy of God in a new and fresh way, so that others will not feel left behind or marginalized, but also we can all begin to show mercy and to a greater degree. It really is an understanding and theology that's not been mined very well. And the Holy Father, I think, taking up on what St. John Paul II did with the canonization of Mother Faustina, gave us a sense of how God's mercy is so key and central to what we believe about Jesus Christ.
Wonderful images there in the door and in the understanding of mercy itself. The year begins, as you mentioned, on December 8th, and the Jubilee will go through what date?
I think it's the Feast of Christ the King in 2016, which closes not only the Holy Year, but closes a liturgical year.
Right.
And so that will be the full year that will allow us to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. And we hope to have some events that coincide with the calendar that the Holy Father already has established for Rome.
Speaking of mercy, let's talk a little bit about Rest in His Arms. It's a ministry whose mission it is to make sure that babies who are abandoned and left to die are not forgotten. And here's a report from Jim Dish.
The tiny casket of baby Angel Antonio is carried into St. Hyacinth Basilica by 2 Chicago police officers. The newborn was found dead in April of 2014, wrapped in a plastic bag and left in a North Side Chicago gangway. The funeral mass was arranged by a not-for-profit organization called Rest in His Arms.
We hope to restore dignity. We hope to be a witness that every life has meaning and immeasurable value, that this is a child of God, and that he deserves to have a beautiful funeral, that abandoned in life, he's not abandoned in death. He is resting in the arms of God.
About 60 people attended the funeral mass. During the homily, Deacon Jim Powells asked those present to pray not just for the baby, but for the mother as well.
It may be that a very young parent, hardly more than a child herself, made some bad choices. She's now facing a ruined life in consequence. Even in the midst of our emotions, our grief, let us spare some thoughts and some prayers for her and her family.
In this case, an 18-year-old woman, still in high school when the baby was born, has been charged with murder. A funeral procession of about 20 vehicles made its way to All Saints Cemetery in Des Plaines. In addition to arranging these funeral services, Rest in His Arms works with the Save Abandoned Babies Foundation to keep babies out of harm's way by promoting safe haven laws.
In Illinois, a mother in crisis can leave her unharmed newborn, up to 30 days old, in the arms of staff at any fire station, police station, emergency medical center, or hospital with no questions asked. And that law has been saving lives. 106 children have been saved in the last 10 years because of the Safe Haven law.
We try to do an awareness because there's so many people that don't know about the law yet. And it's sort of we ask you and the next person to just say, hey, do you know there is such a law? And just by word of mouth, you can save a life.
Even with safe haven laws in place, Rest in His Arms has arranged 34 funerals in the last 10 years. Everything is donated, but the ultimate goal of the ministry is quite simple: to go out of business.
Well, as we heard in today's gospel, we are all children of God, and Christ calls the children to be brought to Him. And so today we brought Angel Antonio back to the Father, back to the church, to pray for him, but to also be reminded that through Christ's death and resurrection, we all will rise again, even when we die, and that we are loved by God, and God will never forget us.
From All Saints Cemetery in Des Plaines, this is Jim Dish reporting for Catholic Chicago.
Wow, wonderful ministry. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, I was so pleased to be able to send a letter to be read at this occasion at St. Hyacinth's. I wasn't able to attend because I was in Rome, but it really is an important ministry, and it says so much to people, not only those who are concerned about the unborn, but to a greater society about the value of life.
Wonderful. It was a great experience, I'm sure. For our viewers, go to restinhisarms.org for more information on the Safe Haven laws and on the Rest in His Arms ministry. We have more to report during Catholic Chicago, from a peace rally to a Eucharistic procession to celebrating Mass at Great America. Michelle Adamowski takes us on a trip around the Archdiocese.
There was a strong turnout for a Eucharistic procession that made its way through downtown Chicago in June. The Young Adult Ministry organized the event called Jesus in the Streets of Chicago. The procession began at St. Peter's in the Loop and made its way to Daly Plaza, Millennium Park, and DePaul University's downtown campus. Several hundred people took part in a peace rally at St. Sabina Parish. Father Michael Flager hosted the rally to mark the end of the school year and to denounce violence in the community. Chicago Archbishop Blase Cupich celebrated Mass at Holy Name Cathedral in honor of the beatification of Archbishop Oscar Romero of San Salvador. The Mass was offered in Spanish and coincided with the beatification Mass in San Salvador.
He didn't come in as someone saying, I'm going to be the one who is doing social activism. That wasn't his intention. But as he arrived and he saw the reality and his people suffering, his priests suffering, all these things going around, he realized he couldn't be quiet. And so therefore, he started preaching for justice and peace and unity and following the gospel and saying that he nor the church could be quiet.
Participants waved white cloths during the entrance procession at Mass during the Hispanic Charismatic Movement. The Archdiocese of Chicago hosted its annual convention at the UIC Forum in June. The 150th anniversary of the end of the Civil War took center stage at St. James at Sag Bridge in Lamont. Father Thomas Coys and Father Bob Miller portrayed prelates with opposing views of slavery. Civil War-era rifles were fired, and there was even an opportunity to visit with President Lincoln. Catholic Family Day at Six Flags Great America was an event paving the way for the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia. Vicar General Father Ron Hicks celebrated Mass in the Grand Music Hall before families enjoyed thrill rides and various attractions at Great America. I'm Michelle Adamowski with your trip around the Archdiocese.
An awful lot going on. One of those pieces, Archbishop, was the Mass on the day that Archbishop Oscar Romero was beatified. Celebration here in the Archdiocese, all in Spanish, and you were the main celebrant.
Well, and it was well attended, and I was so pleased that there were other governments represented by their general consulates, and it was an opportunity for all of us to celebrate a man who is a witness today of the importance of being on the side of those who are the poorest of the poor and those who are marginalized.
Indeed, it was a great celebration here and around the world. Our final story has to do with a bet in which everyone came out a winner. It was a Stanley Cup bet between you, Archbishop, and Bishop Robert Lynch of the Diocese of St. Petersburg, the home Catholic diocese for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Archbishop Cupich was putting up deep dish pizza, compliments of Lou Malnati's, against Florida Citrus. Sites operated by Catholic Charities in the winning city would be the recipients of the food. Of course, we all know that the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup, but then Archbishop Cupich and Mark Malnati quickly announced that pizza would be sent to a Florida shelter anyway, and here in Chicago, pizza was sent to the St. Leo's Residence for Veterans operated by Catholic Charities. The result was a luncheon in which the well-deserving vets received not only Florida Citrus, but deep dish pizza as well. A bet between two bishops.
Right.
Did he really think they were going to win?
Well, they really did. They felt that they had a chance, and of course there was a tie to the series at one point, and so he kept speaking very encouragingly about his team. But I knew that just as our pizza is deep in its dish, so was my confidence in the Blackhawks.
What I think is wonderful, and you see these bets happen all the time, but what was particular about this is that it wasn't you and Bishop Lynch who benefited, right. It was the veterans.
Well, we decided that we wanted to use the spotlight that was a part of the Stanley Cup to be placed on people who are easily forgotten. And so that is something we wanted to achieve, and by drawing our Catholic Charities into this, I think we had a very wonderful result. And I'm very grateful to Mark Malnati and all at the restaurant for their very generous participation in this, and I got to taste some really good pizza.
I heard that. I heard that on the radio when I was driving home, and I heard your reaction. It is good, isn't it?
It is.
Some of the best.
Some
of the best. Archbishop, as always, it's just a pleasure to be with you. Thanks. For everything for this show.
Todd.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching Catholic Chicago. We'll see you again next time.
We invite you to watch segments of Catholic Chicago and hundreds of additional Catholic videos at youtube.com/Catholic Chicago. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter.